When Steel Talks, everybody listens.
This is When Steel Talks. We're here in New York at the NYU campus, and we are very, very pleased and privileged, finally, to have the opportunity to sit down and speak with Dr. Mia Gormandy in person for the first time.
Thank you.
And it is indeed a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I mean, we've just been through your sound check with NYU Steel Ensemble and Castle Steel Orchestra, and there's just a few minutes to go before showtime. So we're really happy to know that you found some time for us and for the Steel Pan global community.
Of course, anytime.
So for those of you who don't know if there are any such people existing in the pan world, too much about Mia, give us a brief version of your history with the steel pan instrument. And once again, Dr. Mia Gormandy, Assistant Professor of the University of Trinidad and Tobago. So just give us a short history of your involvement with pan, how it came about.
Well, I started playing when I was 5 years old. My parents bought a steel pan for my older brother, who's autistic, to play because he's really into music.
Right.
And they had a music teacher teach him, but he wasn't so interested in pan. Instead, at 5, I was reaching over my head trying to play. So lessons for him became lessons for me, and that's sort of how I started. So I started very young. I did all my grades, my music theory grades through ABRSM, steel pan exams through the University of the West Indies, and I also played piano growing up. So at the age of 15, I was performing pretty regularly. I played with Trinidad All-Stars, stage side. I entered tons and tons of competitions. So I was sort of around performing. And then when I was 15 years old, I had the opportunity to perform for an award ceremony. And at that award ceremony was Dr. Larry Snyder and Liam Teague. And they saw me perform and started talking about me coming to NIU, Northern Illinois University.
Yep.
So I was able to get a scholarship. And at 16, my parents were like, all right, you're going to go do your degree. We're going to drop you off.
So,
goodbye.
At which point did you think, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and it's also going to be my vocation, my career?
That's a great question. I think I was so involved in steel pan from so young that I think many years passed and I didn't know yet. Because when I was in secondary school, I did pretty well at sciences. So I did physics and chemistry and math. For some time I kind of wanted to do computer analyzing and all these different things that I was interested in, but pan was just always there. So when I played and I got the scholarship, it was like, oh well, I guess this is what I'm doing, sort of thing. Not necessarily in a bad way though. It's like because I was very passionate about pan and I was passionate about music. And I think when I got to my master's degrees, when I was like, this is what I want to do. Instead of just riding the path that was sort of there, it became something that this is what I am going to pursue
for the rest of
my life.
There was a time, before you actually made your choice, if you remember, and you were reaching out on social media.
Oh, was I?
and you were saying, I'm thinking about seriously, going into pan as my career path, and I want to do my degree in that. But I have some family members who are a little bit concerned.
Right. Yes.
They would prefer that I prefer my sciences.
Yes.
So at that point, you were seeking feedback.
Yes,
on social
I remember
media.
That actually. Yeah, because my extended family, so my aunts and my cousins, and I have a family, that's of a variety of people, and some of my cousins, they're engineers and
doctors and everything else.
Yes, I have a cousin who's a doctor of nursing at UCLA, and so I come from, some of my family members have accomplished.
You would have kind of gone down that path as well.
And they thought that that's the path that I should have gone.
So what do they think now?
Oh, now they're like, I chose the right path. But my parents were always very supportive. They always pushed for me to do music, and
Okay,
because
this is
my
good.
mother, she grew up as an artist, so she drew a lot and entered art competitions. And my father is a self-taught pianist. So even though they had their regular jobs, my father was a musician on the side, and he sort of accompanied me when I was growing up.
Okay.
And my mom was also a creative person.
So definitely you had that passion even from your parents.
Yeah.
That's pretty
They
good.
definitely pushed me, and sometimes, and even when I finished my second master's degree, I did not necessarily want to go straight into the PhD. I was like, oh my gosh, this is too much school, I'm stressed, I don't know if I want to continue.
But you did.
And yeah, thanks to my parents too, they helped push me, and I was like, no, I need to take a break. And I think life just worked out that way, because everything that I applied to at that point, I had zero response, not even for a yes or not even for a no. So I applied to different jobs,
Okay.
I applied to different things, and there was like nothing, no feedback. The only thing was, you got accepted into the doctoral program at Florida State University.
And the rest.
And then, of course,
It's
the rest is
history.
history.
On the topic of your doctorate, your doctoral dissertation
Yes.
was dealing with steel band communities in Japan. Why that topic? And how did it come about?
Well, it's funny because when I was pursuing ethnomusicology, and I always wanted to travel a lot, to be honest.
Well, you certainly have a good vocation.
So I love learning new cultures and meeting new people from different cultures and stuff like that. And it was a mixture of that, and also I became very good friends with Yuko Asada at Northern Illinois University. And while I was there, she sort of taught me some different
Vestiges of
aspects of Japanese culture. So
right.
we'd go and eat Japanese food, and she'd tell me all these things about Japan. And eventually I also started realizing that there were lots of Japanese people who were playing for Panorama. I was
In
like,
Trinidad
in
and Tobago,
Trinidad.
yeah.
I'm like, why is nobody talking about this?
Okay.
Like, what? They came all the way from Japan to
Every
Trinidad
year.
every year without fail. And they're here for like long periods of time. Sometimes when we have visitors from the United States or from Europe, they can only take certain time off of their job.
But the Japanese
but
are
the
very
Japanese are like
flexible.
2
They're
months
there.
and 3 months. So I think the amazement of that, and also understanding a little bit about Japanese culture through Yuko, and wanting to travel,
And the rest.
just sort of just
Everything
came
fell
together.
into place.
And
So
yeah.
talk about a bit of what you learned or what you experienced about the steel band community and culture in Japan.
Oh, it was fascinating.
Okay.
Because in Japan, so we have the steel band. It's our national instrument of Trinidad and Tobago. And this instrument, which is so deeply rooted in our culture, is placed now in other cultures. And then, of course, because it's something that's in someone else's culture, it then takes on a whole new form, right, culturally. And as an ethnomusicologist, you sort of learn to sort of accept, instead of saying, oh no, I'm a Trinidadian and this is how it should be.
No, you
can't
appreciate
do
what they
that.
bring to the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was able to appreciate what they brought to the table, and understand, how their culture actually seeped into the steel band communities there. And some of the major differences, there are way more female panists than
Sounds
male
like the way
panists.
things have been going these days.
Like, I mean, the ratio is actually way more women than men, and that's because women in Japan are more the people who seek hobbies. They do a lot of hobbies, whereas the men are expected to work for long hours. So a lot of men don't have a lot of hobbies, but the women do, and pan is mostly
they
a hobby.
gravitated to it
Yes,
naturally.
naturally.
Right.
And then the next thing too, they don't have panyards. So they have to rent a space mostly to practice. Most of the steel bands, they have to rent a space, and everybody owns their own instrument. So bass players own their own instrument. And I remember one person who played bass, she bought the bass band and sold her car and bought a new car so that she can transport the basses.
Oh my.
And I was like, what? It completely blew my mind. But so it's like they're really dedicated to it, and I really appreciate their dedication
That's
to
excellent.
the steel band.
So, via your studies and your travels, you've had lots of experiences. What are some of your takeaways in general, not only in relation to Japan, but to other countries that you've already traveled and performed in, and or studied or conducted workshops to date? Just generally.
What's my takeaway?
General takeaways, you know.
Well, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot, you know, now that I'm back in Trinidad, because I lived outside of Trinidad for 11 years, 10 to 11 years. So I moved back 3 years ago, and you know, it was as though I had a culture shock of my own my own country, you know, because I wasn't there for some time. But one of the things that I realized is there are more people who want to be together and want to unite than there are people who don't want to unite. And I think sometimes everybody sort of gets trapped in their little world, and it becomes competitive. And it's like, oh, I have to do this better than this person, and I have to do this. And not in Trinidad, I'm talking about in general. And when you actually go to different places around the world, and you go to see different steel band communities, you realize everybody just sort of wants to come together and do things together. And it's sort of hard to see that unless you've actually
traveled and been and experienced it.
And then through a project, the Virtual Steel Band,
right,
which Yuko Asada, Scott McConnell, Abe Riding, and I sort of put together the first one. Through that, we were able to see how many panists around the world were just wanting
that kind of opportunity,
that type of opportunity,
especially those who can't necessarily travel to Trinidad all the time. Right?
And we were hearing some stories. I mean, there's a guy in Spain. He said, "I'm the only panist that I know in my area, so this is a perfect opportunity." And he played each pan. He had 4 different parts on each pan and recorded it and sent it to us.
So what is the status of that project right now?
We're trying to transform it, and we're going to work on the 3rd one soon.
Okay.
But so I mean, in Japan and Argentina, I mean, they were just places that were popping up, and I think we need to unite and put our heads together, and instead of trying to compete with each other, you know, be on the same page.
I hear that. So, in terms of you're a young professional musician, you're also an educator, you're ethnomusicologist, and more, a performing artist in her own right. What do you see in terms of maybe like the future of Pan from a national perspective of Trinidad and Tobago, and perhaps also on the global scene, from the global perspective? Just your overall thoughts on that.
Well, in Trinidad right now, I always say there's this transformation that's happening, and I think in the history books 50 years from now, I feel like it should be labeled as something because we see, you know, of course you have the older generation of panists, and when I mean older, I don't mean to make it sound that way, but they've been around much longer, let's say more experienced, right, and they're used to a certain culture. Then you have the up and coming panists, which is on the other end. So like, for example, at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, we're seeing just last year we had 60 pan majors, all learning 60, all learning how to read, arrange, play. So
that's excellent.
So now the musicians that are at least coming out of Trinidad and Tobago, and
you manufacturing as well?
Well, we do pan tuning as well, where they do a 2-year sort of course through pan tuning, and they're manufacturing certificates and stuff that's
so
also available.
It's an all-around experience, which is good.
So we see now that the younger generation is actually coming up with way more skills to function within the world of music.
It's savvy, it's technology-based.
Yeah, technology-based, being able to read music, being music literate, you know, being able to arrange and score your music so that people around the world can play. And I think that direction for us in Trinidad and Tobago is sort of going to bring us up now and have the steel pan community now look to us, you know, because as the country where pan is.
And that's how it ties into the global perspective.
Yes.
Especially from the technology aspect.
Technology as well. And I'm actually working on a new project called Panitation, which is it's going to be an online sort of database that hosts music scores. Because right now, one of the biggest problems
people are always
that I've seen is, how do I get the scores? They're buying scores here, they're buying scores there, and I want this and I want that. So it's going to be musical transcriptions, and you can just go to one place and access many scores. So it's just sort of a place for everybody to come together. So scores that are already published, scores that people want to publish, you know, so that we just have one place that you can go and get that in addition to other information as well.
So you're functioning in many roles.
trying.
You are functioning par excellence in multiple roles, of course. Educator, performing artist, ethnomusicologist, you're a cultural ambassador, there's a whole lot. Talk about, the roles, how they complement each other, and is there one that you prefer? You're also an arranger. Do you compose by chance as well?
Yes, actually we're playing one of my compositions on the show later.
Excellent. So talk about how they complement each other, and is there one that you prefer more than another, or?
I think they all work hand in hand. I mean, my position at UTT, I really like my position at UTT because I get to be hands-on with some of the upcoming panists, and which to me is important to me because there were so many people who helped me get to where I am. I could not have done it without some really major people, especially Cliff Alexis, late Cliff Alexis, who has done so much for us. So, I think my role there is at UTT is sort of, this is what I function as mainly. And within that position, I'm able to help students, hopefully influence them. I was able to bring 2 students here with me. So creating those opportunities and like, okay, we want you to come perform at NYU. Can I bring my students? So using that platform to also get some of the young young panists out. And then so that position, and then of course with my research background, helps me to sort of pull everything together. And because it's a school system, there are a couple months where you're not teaching.
Right.
So those couple months I really get the time to focus on projects and focus on other things and maybe do some traveling and stuff like that. So it complements each other.
Everything works well. Synergy is great there.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts initially when you traveled out of Trinidad for the first time and you came abroad, and of course you encountered a different system entirely, especially regarding Pan? What was that like for you?
Oh wow! I mean, so because I was in Trinidad and I played and I won a number of competitions, which I was fortunate to do. In my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I could play. I could sing this, all right, I can play. And then I got to NIU, and everybody was reading, and they had a performance. And even though I had grade 8 music theory, sight reading was not something that I did a lot of. It's a difference of understanding how music works on a page, and then having music in front of you and being able to read it right there on the spot. And when I got to NIU, they had a performance just like a week later, not even a week, a couple of days. And Cliff and Liam said, here are the scores. And I was like, and I put these scores in front of me, and I realized that everybody around me were reading like that. They were reading, and I thought to myself, wow, I need to up my game, and I really need to dive into it, and I realized there that it's a very different world, because sight reading wasn't something that I needed per se when I was in Trinidad. So having that experience made me ensure that I tried my best at everything that I did, because I didn't want to be left behind. I kind of wanted
to. No, you couldn't afford to.
I could not have afforded to.
Especially looking into your future role as an educator, you need to be all-round basis.
Yeah, well, and the thing is too, I mean, being an international student at NIU, there's no chance of failure, because then you go straight back home. So I had to just dive deep and do it. So yeah, it was different, but it forced me to become a better student and a better person in general.
Okay. What would today's Mia, 2019 Mia, if you had the opportunity, say to Mia years ago?
Trust yourself. Because I think, when you're young and things might become confusing and you're on a path that you feel like you alone are on, and you're not sure if what you're doing is the right thing, or maybe you should be doing something else, or should I do ethnomusicology or this, or so I would tell myself, trust yourself and trust your gut. Especially
if you have your parents and some members of your family supporting you.
Yes, exactly.
This is excellent. So if you had the opportunity to combine, should I say, quote unquote, conventional orchestra of about, say, maybe 50 to 100 pieces, and then, of course, 75 to 100 piece steel orchestra. Would you like that?
Absolutely.
Are you looking?
What?
Are
Yes.
you looking or contemplating that at some point? Not virtually.
Yeah, you're
in
talking
reality.
about realistically
Yeah.
in real life.
Yeah.
It was something that I thought about a long time ago when I had a moment where I was focusing on conducting when I was doing my master's at NIU. So I thought, oh my gosh, having the opportunity to conduct such a large band and to have such a large sound, you know,
Yes.
come from so many pans that's not in a panorama context, right? Something a little bit different with new compositions for pan. Oh, that would be amazing. And I thought about that back then, so I'm glad you reminded me because
Oh,
maybe
good.
that might become a new path.
We're looking forward to this.
I'll write it down in my little book. Something to do. Yeah.
All right, this is good. Steel band politics. Your overall thought? Yeah, that's one of your interests. So
Yes.
what comes to mind and what is in your heart regarding steel band and politics?
Oh, that's great.
From Mia's perspective.
Well, okay, so I did do my master's thesis on steel pan politics, and I focused on phase 2 performing Do Something for Pan in 2011 at Panorama, which was completely bashing Pan Trinidad, which is a competition that they host, you know.
The event organizer.
Yes,
Yeah,
of course, right.
interesting,
So,
yeah.
so that space and that social context is what I sort of focused on. But what I came to realize in doing that research is that Pan Trinidad is actually, or I should say, the organizations that came before Pan Trinidad that sort of created Pan Trinidad. They were actually very important to the history of steel pan.
Yes.
And I would not have known that if I didn't do my research, right? And understanding that, you know, where steel pan was at the time, and it's coming out of these really low class sort of communities, and of course you have the people who are upper class thinking that this is not
the
good
perceived
enough.
lower class.
Right. The
Yes,
perceived lower class.
The community, because
Yes.
the grassroots.
Exactly,
that's
the
where things come from.
grassroots
Yeah.
and that's what they were considered. Oh, steel pan is something that's low class, right? That's what it was
Yeah,
called,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that the
Then-
person who's playing it is low class too, and that's sort of the perspective that many of the upper right class citizens thought. And because these organizations came about and because they were key people that sort of created something to say, okay, we're going to defend panists now, and we're going to create competitions and create events for them to perform.
And not only that, show that it is the glue
Yes.
in the community.
Exactly, in the community. So that is sort of where Pan Trinidad sort of came from, is that idea of ensuring that all of the panists sort of come together. But now when you think about Pan Trinidad, I think a lot of people just think,
Well, yeah.
oh, what are they doing? Oh my God, you know, all
kinda
this stuff is,
complicated, but
yeah, it's
now,
very
yeah.
complicated, and that's kind of, I think, what everybody thinks about when they go to steel pan politics. But what I realized though overall is we panists, we expect Pan Trinidad to do everything. It's Pan Trinidad, the government, this, that, and the other. But we really should be just taking on our own things and trying to come together and do things. So when you ask me about politics, I mean, yes, it's there and it's probably always going to be there, but I don't think the rest of us panists who are not necessarily in those roles, I don't think we should just expect them to do everything.
Interesting.
You know, I think we should come together. You have a project, do it.
Okay.
You know, don't wait for them to do it, because we know now that the current Pan Trinidad is sort of in a place that's very difficult because
Especially financially speaking.
financially
Yeah,
speaking,
okay.
so their hands are a little bit tied. So while they're trying to bring things back to normal, you know,
Whatever that might be, yeah.
whatever that means, it's difficult. So maybe we should just give them a second.
Interesting. On the topic about projects and you yourself as an educator, what do you think of the perspective of the attempt to bring PAN back into schools, but from an elementary level in Trinidad and Tobago? Are you looking forward to it?
That's an easy answer. It should be there.
Overdue?
It should be there. There are definitely the people there to teach it. I mean, like I mentioned at UCT, we had 60 students.
So therefore, the resources are there.
The resources are absolutely there. And in addition, I'm actually working on a book as well. I'm doing too many things.
No, that's good.
But
you do it all.
It's a sight reading book because I think, like I mentioned in my experience, it was important.
It was a shock to find.
It was
that,
a shock to
yeah.
find out, and if Panis in Trinidad want to really come on the international stage, you're gonna have to be able to read. So creating that textbook that these young elementary school students and
Can get a hands-on
secondary schools can
experience,
get
yeah,
a hands-on
at the
experience.
beginning,
Yeah.
So not just going to play in the pan yards for Panorama or be a
Yes.
stateside member, but if they are interested to pursue it just a little bit more,
Yep.
they can have
there's a
really
formal-
well-rounded formal basis.
Absolutely.
Not, and with pan as the focal instrument.
Absolutely. So
This is
then when
excellent,
they
yeah.
don't, so because what we're seeing now is when panists or musicians in general come into UTT, their sight reading level usually is very low because they don't have that experience within their music classes.
But as more of the educators are turned out from UTT and licensed.
And the
okay.
tertiary level in general, and they go back and that is then perpetuated through the
And
school
that's what
system.
we want, yeah.
We then
Okay.
we then have a higher level of musicians coming out right at the back of UTT.
So in the couple minutes you have left, what would what are your thoughts generally that you would extend to people who are looking to really uplift the steel band art form and culture generally in Trinidad and Tobago, but also with an international perspective? In a couple minutes, what would be your general advice, especially since you yourself are still walking the path and seeing what's actually happening and experiencing different perspectives from different countries?
Don't wait, just start. I mean,
What about?
don't
okay.
wait, start, do it. You think you come up with an idea, do
Just
it.
get into it.
Yeah, just get into
Oh,
it.
that's
I'm
excellent.
gonna wait for this and I wanna wait.
No.
just start.
Let's get it.
Do it.
Mia, Dr. Mia Gormandy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So much for being with us here at
Thank
Steel
you.
Talks. All the best.
Thank you so much. And I should mention that I was recently married. So my name is now Dr. Mia Gormandy-Benjamin. Yes.
Yes.
I have to acknowledge my husband.
And your husband is actually here off camera.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank
you. You had the opportunity to be on Trinidad and Tobago television for the Panorama competition of 2019. That was a wonderful experience having you sitting there.
Thank you.
Do you think that you might be doing that a bit more in the future? Are you looking forward to that?
I hope so, but it wouldn't necessarily be up to me, right?
But if it is,
really,
it's something that you would like to do.
Oh, I loved it. I had
It
a
was an
really
excellent
good time.
experience.
And
Yeah.
I think I took the opportunity to do a lot of research actually before I went on television.
That was what was really
So,
great.
yeah.
Experiencing the event through your eyes and your ears,
Thank
and that's
you.
why we're really looking forward to if there's any more offers or opportunities.
If the
we
offers are
really
there, I will
hope
say
that you
yes.
will be there.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the time, and for the music, and for your experiences and all that you're going to be sharing with us in the future, Dr. Mia Gorman.
Thank you so much.